I struggled with finishing my games for years. And I was just following these endless tutorials, making these small little prototypes. And it kind of felt like I was productive and I made progress. But in reality, I couldn't even make a basic movement script. Like, I couldn't do anything because I didn't learn anything from the tutorials. And that's because tutorials aren't like the way to learn. When you are watching tutorials, you're kind of just following the things that the guy or girl on YouTube does, and you're just following their steps, and you implement it into your own game, and you get a result from it in the end. It's not hard to see why it kind of feels productive, because you aren't pasting the code directly, you are actually typing it in yourself, but what you're typing in is basically just what you see on your other screen, where you're watching the tutorial. And that's not how learning works. Your brain doesn't automatically think, wow, this information that I'm reading and just typing into this, I have to remember. Like, your brain doesn't think that. That's not how your brain works. Your brain works by storing important information. So for example, if you're solving a hard task and you kind of have to think a bit or maybe a lot to actually solve the task, maybe you have to do some research on your own, but it isn't like clearly laid out how you're going to do it, then your brain is actually going to think, wow, this problem was actually quite hard. I should remember this stuff so that I doesn't have this problem again. So the next time you do it, your brain already knows and remembers how to solve that specific problem. So that's why tutorials don't work. But this video isn't about following tutorials. This video is about why you should actually finish your games instead of just doing these prototypes or just following tutorials, like both of them. So we've already gone over why tutorials are bad and why you won't learn anything from it. And now we can also talk about how just making these small prototypes and never actually finishing a whole game is bad. If it's like a tutorial prototype, then we've already gone over why it's bad. But let's say, for example, your routine right now is just making small prototypes and starting new projects over and over again, which I've done before, by the way. For some of you, you might have like a goal to actually finish the whole game, but something just comes up and you can't seem to finish it because you come over a real challenge, like something that's very hard, or you are just doing them on purpose because you don't really like the idea of having like a whole big project that you work on for months. Maybe you're more creative and doesn't want the same thing right now. And these two causes are two completely different things. The first one, if you are just unable to make the full games and you instead just do these prototypes and you scrap them and you start over, then you can completely and easily learn how to not make that happen. Like, even though you might not be like advanced or intermediate, you can even be a beginner. With AI and stuff, you can make a whole game as long as you know like a few principles. And you can watch my channel, I have tons of videos on how to do it correctly and how to start your games and how to actually finish them, if this is your cause. But if your cause is actually the second one, which is that you just simply doesn't want to, then this video is more for you. Because there are a ton of reasons why you learn tons more things and actually get more success from making finished projects instead of just constantly making small prototypes. And one of the biggest examples of this is that you just solve these problems that you never have to worry about in the start of projects. So for example, if you are constantly just making small prototypes and projects, whatever, then you never like have the problem that you need to integrate like a save data system, for example, into your existing code base. Like, you just don't have that problem. You can just use, like, if you do them in your prototypes, you can just use player prefs because the project isn't that advanced even. So you never learn to work with save data or JSON files, for example. It's just something you don't need in a small prototype. And even if you have a prototype that you do JSON files in, then you're not going to learn effectively how you integrate that into existing systems, like in a real world scenario. For example, if you think, yeah, I can just make a prototype where I learned a specific thing. But sure, you learn like the isolated thing about how you like write to JSON files and read to them and stuff like that. but you never actually learn how to integrate it into a whole game, like in a real scenario. So it's basically like the school system. You just try to remember these things, and apparently they are useful when you are going to work. But as we all know, 99% of things that we learn in school are completely useless for your goals and career. So if you do this, you actually learn how to solve like real world, real problems, not just these made up problems that you just kind of make yourself because you want to learn this one specific thing. If you have a big project, you actually learn how to implement it the real way, not just in theory. Like you actually learn how to do it in practice. And also in general, you just feel like a real game developer. Because if you make prototypes and never actually finish a whole game, I would go as far to say you can't even call yourself a game dev. Because you aren't finishing any games, you're just making prototypes, or like a prototype dev. You get my point? Like finishing prototypes and actually making a presentable and finished project are two completely different things. Like on the one side, you just make prototypes which are isolated. It's like calling yourself an author when you haven't even finished one single book. You just write one chapter over and over in different styles and different like scenarios. And if you do that, you can't call yourself an author. And the same applies to game dev. If you can't make a finished and presentable product to show, you aren't a game dev. You're just someone that makes prototypes and releases them. And I'm not saying that prototypes doesn't have their place. If you are like very new to game dev, then I'm not saying you should make some like complete finished and polished game. That's not my point. Then you can obviously make prototypes, but don't follow tutorials to make them. Just experiment and use prototypes that way. But as soon as you have the ability to make a complete project, which isn't very hard as I said before, because you can use AI and you can use Google, whatever tools you need, then you should focus immediately on trying to finish a game, even though it's going to be extremely bad, like my first game. You should just do it. You'll learn so much from it. That's the only way to go from a beginner to a intermediate. And also, in general, just doing these finished games actually makes you solve problems that you never have to solve when you are just starting a project. As I said before, for example, if you're going to implement save data into a game, that's a problem that you want to implement into your small prototype. Or if you do, you're just going to do it the easy way, like in player prefs. And a kind of different type of problem that you might not think of, but it's actually a really like important skill for a game dev that actually makes games and not just prototypes, is that you kind of have to train your brain to get at peace with good enough solutions instead of just constantly chasing perfection. Because when you have a full game, you have all of these systems and things that you have to worry about. Like you can spend like a week polishing the UI in your game, like everything. But you just can't do that. You're a solo game dev, you don't have time to polish the UI for a week. You have to train your brain to get at peace with the good enough UI. Not the perfect UI. You don't have time for that. As well as a finished game is also more likely to actually get played by others. Not just maybe a few friends of yours, but actually like people that you don't know, like strangers. And people might do like reviews on it, YouTube videos, and like comment on your post with like information and tips and tricks and like reviews. This is bad, this is good. And you'll just learn so much from it. It will seriously accelerate your growth so much. And that's something you never learn when you are like in your own bubble, just making these prototypes. And you might not even be releasing them. And in general, you just change your mindset to being a business owner instead of just a coder or a designer. Because you have so many other things to worry about and to manage when you release your own game. When you're just making prototypes, you just have like systems and designs you have to worry about. But when you actually release them, you have to think about like the marketing, like the PR, how you present everything, make the trailer, make the screenshots, like playtest, polish. Like you have to do all of these other things as well, and you have to manage it like a real business. Because if you also release games, you can get revenue from it, obviously, and you can show it off. So you can use that game to, for example, make a YouTube channel like I do. You can use it to like earn revenue in ads or in-app purchases. And it just becomes like a little business instead of just you just coding and designing stuff. And also the last point that I can come up with right now is that you kind of learn to like cut out the less important features and prioritize the most important. Because when you have this big project, like kind of mentioned before, you can't spend all this time on like the less important things. You have to learn how to filter out, like this is not important, this is really important, and focus all your energy on the things that are important, and only after all the important things are done, you can focus on the less important thing. And only just polish when it matters, like in the beta stages of the game, not constantly polishing everything. And that also builds discipline that transfers into every type of project. So if you want to make a prototype, like in between two games, for example, or you need a prototype to learn how to implement it into your game and you don't want to screw things up or something like that, then the discipline from like learning how to prioritize things, it transfers into prototypes as well. So you just build this discipline as a game developer. Now I want to say thank you for watching this entire video, and if you want to learn more stuff just like this and in more detail and also have direct contact with me, you can click the first link in the description. So thank you for watching this video, click the link below and I'll see you. Goodbye.